The healer identity trap. When helping feeds ego, there's a form of ego that doesn't look like pride, doesn't look like arrogance. Sometimes it looks like compassion. After awakening, something interesting begins to happen. You start seeing patterns more clearly. You see fear driving behavior. You see people repeating emotional loops. You see the same dynamics playing out again and again. And when you see it clearly, you naturally want to help, especially when it's someone you care about. You don't want to see them suffer. You want to share what helped you. You want to explain the pattern in a way that might bring them relief. But something else can begin to happen. Frustration creeps in, not because you don't care, but because what you're trying to say doesn't always come across the way you mean it. Sometimes it's misunderstood. Sometimes it's interpreted completely differently. Sometimes it sounds like criticism when you intended compassion. And sometimes they just don't see it at all. You can explain it clearly, break it down step by step, and they still go right back into the same pattern, the same reaction, the same relationship, the same emotional loop. And that's the moment where something subtle appears. Not just compassion, but attachment. Attachment to being the one who sees. And that's where the healer identity can begin. Welcome back to the I Am experience, where awakening becomes real. Today we're exploring the healer identity trap. When helping others quietly becomes a new form of ego. From personal experience, one of the hardest things after awakening is watching people you care about suffer. You can see the pattern clearly. You can see what's driving their behavior. You can see the fear underneath it. And sometimes it feels like you have the answer. That could bring them relief, not because you think you're superior, but because you've experienced something similar and found a way through it. So you try to explain it. You try to share the insight that helped you. And when it doesn't land, when they repeat the same pattern, frustration appears. Not because you want to control them, but because watching someone continue to suffer when you believe there's a way out feels difficult. But over time, I started noticing something. What worked for me doesn't automatically work for someone else. The realization that helped me change was something I had to discover on my own. No one could have explained it to me in a way that would have made it land sooner. I had to walk through the experience myself. I had to struggle with it. I had to sit with the discomfort. I had to reach the moment where I was ready to see it. And that's the same process everyone else goes through. People don't wake up through borrowed understanding. They wake up through lived realization. You can point to the door, you can describe what's behind it, but they still have to walk their own path. And sometimes their path will look completely different from yours. Different lessons, different timing, different insights. When you realize that, something begins to soften. You stop trying to rescue people from their experience. You stop trying to carry their awakening, because awakening isn't something you can give someone. It's something they arrive at when they're ready to see. There's another subtle part of this trap. Helping people can become identity. You become the one who understands, the one who interprets patterns, the one who explains emotional dynamics. And people start coming to you for advice. They ask for your perspective. They share their struggles. And it can feel meaningful to help. But the ego quietly collects those moments. It begins to build an identity around being needed, around being the one who sees. And once that identity forms, something subtle begins to happen. You start analyzing instead of relating. Someone shares a story, and your mind starts diagnosing the pattern. Instead of simply listening, you begin offering solutions. Instead of relating as equals, you move into the role of guide. Not because you mean to, but because helping has become where your sense of value lives. And when someone doesn't follow your guidance, frustration returns, not because they're suffering, but because they didn't accept your solution. That frustration reveals the attachment. You weren't just helping, you were invested. Real compassion does not require someone to change. Real compassion allows people to learn through their own timing. Helping someone isn't the problem. Needing to be the one who helps is. Awakening doesn't make you responsible for fixing others. It makes you responsible for staying aware yourself. You can still share insight. You can still offer perspective, but you release the need to carry someone else's path, because the goal isn't to recreate your journey in others. The goal is to allow them to discover their own. When you let go of the need to fix people, something interesting happens. Your relationships become lighter. You stop feeling responsible for someone else's growth. You stop analyzing every interaction. You become more present, more human, more equal. You're no longer the healer. You're simply someone who has walked a path and is willing to share experience when asked. And sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is allow someone to learn through their own life. If this resonated, comment, "I release the need to fix." In the next episode, we're exploring another subtle trap: detachment versus avoidance, when peace becomes emotional withdrawal. Stay grounded, stay humble, stay awake. You are the I Am.